Right, so you're looking at the Cartronic Heli C909 radio controlled toy helicopter. Now we bought this for £20 from the Lidl. Now if I see out like this at that kind of price, I'll just start getting excited and thinking, ooh, yes, I'll have a poke at that. So yeah, I mean, I've had these kind of things before. I used to have the Macklin ones, the Pico Z helicopters, etc. So I'm not exactly new to them. Now this sturdy little thing is made out of plastic fiberglass kind of effect there at the front. Looks like steel bar to me, making up the feet and the frame of it, and then some kind of light, maybe brushed aluminium or something there to make the side case containing the motor and the battery and stuff. Now I'm intrigued with this because the control pad that it came with looks like a games console control pad. So straight away I was like, oh yeah, that's alright, that might be easier to control than your conventional big flat thing like we used to get in 80s, etc. So we'll just take a quick look at this. Basically you've got up and down, that controls the height of the helicopter, and then you've got left, right, forward and backwards, which controls the direction. This thing that looks like it might be some kind of motion touch sensitive button doesn't do anything, it's just a blank plate. And then you get your left and right trim, and the centre and the up and down, again, they're just blank, nothing works. So it's just left and right trim on this, everything else is just for display really. It's got a couple of buttons at the back. Only one of them is a real button. That's supposed to be a turbo button, believe it or not, so we'll get to find out what that does in due course. That one again, it's just a blank button, it doesn't do anything. So right, you also notice it's got a USB socket on the front, because the charger for this little helicopter is a USB charger. So you can either charge it off the remote, or you can charge it off any other device that kicks out the 5 volt required from a USB connection. iPhone plug socket, etc. So yeah, small little lead. Charging lead goes into that tiny charging port. Nice and careful, in like that. And the power button is underneath for this helicopter. Tiny little red switch there to power it on. Now you might notice that these propellers are really loose. They're not in sort of like a fixed position. You might expect them to be in a fixed position. I know I was when I got it. I thought, hey, oh, what's crap with them? They're just like spinning around any old way. And I were almost like, do I have to get a screwdriver on them and start tightening them up? But no, we don't have to tighten them up. It's a self-balancing gyroscopic helicopter. So even though these are loose and they're not in any set position, it will sort itself out when in use. Right, so let's crack on. This is the bit you're all wanting to see. We've turned it on now. When it's beeping like that, it means it's trying to sync with this. It uses 2.4 Wi-Fi rather than a straight RF signal. So just taking its time to sync. There we go. Right, so it's now basically it's paired up. You know, we've switched it on. It's now paired up with this. So let's have the fun and games bit. Here we go. Let's have a play. Right, what we're basically doing there is just trying to keep it nice and low and controlled just initially, because the last thing I want to do with this is just send it flying up into the sky, lose control of it, let it fall down and break, especially on this hard tiled floor. So nice and steady until you get a feel for it basically. Now to be fair, that actually felt quite controlled. It's a little bit difficult in here because I've got really drafty conditions and it's windy and wet and horrible outside, and there's always a draft coming under this kitchen door. So it is a bit difficult for flying model helicopters in here. You're always going to get the heat at the top, the cold draft at the bottom. It's going to cause some air currents and a bit of friction while flying, but I thought that was fairly stable for one of these. I've played them in the past, certain helicopters, radio controlled helicopters in the past. I've had them before and they've been unbalanced and flying off all over the shop and really difficult to control. So far so good with this little beast. Right, so as you can see there, I took it up to about 2 meters high, and then I sort of like got it back down to a meter and released the controls, and it dropped. It kind of landed alright. It took a little bit of impact, but it landed alright. I wouldn't like to think I was dropping it from any higher, otherwise you do risk breaking it, but it just about survived falling from about a meter. It's really stable actually. Once you get out of the air current bit, it seems oh dear. Quite enjoyed flying that. But we're coming to the end of its flying time, battery wise. Now obviously it was clear to see I crashed it a couple of times there, which obviously I'm not happy about, but it did survive. There's nothing wrong with it, and that's the good thing about having the trim as well, because let's just say if it does take a little bit of a knock and it somehow just off balances itself, you can always use the trim to centre it again when you're flying. That's what the trim is basically for. If the helicopter becomes unbalanced through you crashing it, or you know, just time, distortion, whatever, then at least you can try to balance it with the trim and try and get its stability back. So yeah, quite a good product. £20. There's not a lot to it, but there doesn't have to be, because it does what it's supposed to do. It's an indoor radio control helicopter. It's quite impressive. £20, Lidl.